In this lecture, we're going to be talking about breaking and changing habits. We're going to go through a system that works. Usually, people give a lot of advices, a lot of different tips when it comes to habits, and we did add these in Perfecting the System lecture. And of course, there are a lot of details in other lectures concerning breaking and changing habits, because eventually, changing habits, all the information that was given in this course related to habits are all interrelated and correlated, and they all work in a complementary kind of way. And the first step to start this system is to identify the cue. Now, we're not going to talk again about the cue because you guys probably heard about it a lot by now. And by now, you need to know how to identify the cue. Because, as we said before, we can go to previous lectures and you can see all the information that was said concerning cues and how to identify them. But to know more on how to implement identifying the cues in the system, there are some questions that you need to ask yourself. You need to use a lot of introspection. Once these habits occur and you want to try to identify the cue, ask yourself questions. Time and place first. Where are you and what time is it? Sometimes it's a particular time or a particular place that can be the trigger for the habit. An act. What did you just do? Sometimes there are a lot of habits that are interrelated and correlated with other habits. That means when a certain act or a certain habit occurs, then afterwards unfolds the other habit that you're trying to eliminate. People. Who are you with? Sometimes you tend to do some habits when you're with a certain person. When you're with that friend who is, for example, reckless, you tend to do a lot of reckless stuff, and then you get the habit of becoming reckless. So identifying that with this particular person you tend to be reckless, you'll be asking yourself the question and finding the answer, of course. And finally, emotions. Your emotional state, what are you feeling at the moment, can also be a cue or a trigger to start and unfold a series of habits. So of course, sometimes it's just one simple habit, but sometimes it's a succession or a series of habits. So as soon as you find yourself engaging in this new habit, you need to pause and ask yourself these questions. Where are you? What time is it? What did you just do? Who are you with? And what are you feeling? And you need, as we said, when you commit it to paper, it's always better. So you need to write these things down and become really aware of them, because this is the door for you to be able to change the habit. This is the first thing that happens before the old habit starts, and this is exactly where you need to start the work. Now, once you start doing this exact same exercise, asking yourself these questions every single time, you'll be able to identify maybe several cues that are occurring. You need to look for which one stays the same every single time you feel the urge to start the new habit, or once you start the new habit. Which one of all of the things that you wrote are consistent? If there's one thing that is always consistent, that means this can be the principal cue. And you need to do this exercise for a while to be able to identify potential cues that might arise at different events, at different instances, with different experiences, that can eventually unfold the old habit and let it stick, instead of helping you overcoming this old habit to get the new habit and just establish it as a lifestyle. Now, the second thing to do is to identify the extents of the reward. Rewards are the third thing that we talked about in the habit loop. It's the thing that you're craving, whatever you want to get out of the habit. So a good way to identify it is to ask yourself, what craving do you think you're satisfying through the habit? And then you need to test this theory. And the way to do so, the way to identify the reward and really be sure that this is the reward, there are two different steps that you need to take. First, you need to ask yourself questions, of course, and do some introspection. How are you feeling after the habit? Who are you with? What emotions are you feeling? What time is it? And where are you? Because sometimes the reward can be linked to each and every one of these, and you need to be able to identify it. Now, Once there is a recurring habit and every single time there is a recurring reward with a recurring cue, then you know that these might be of course several cues or one or several rewards, but then you identify them and then you know what the cue is and what the reward is, and of course you know what the routine is. The routine is basically the habit. However, to be even more sure, you need to test the reward even more. So once you write the list of the potential rewards that you think might be the main rewards when it comes to this particular habit and this particular habit loop, try to substitute to another reward. And the best way to do this is to substitute the reward, meaning whatever reward you think is the potential reward that is related to this habit loop, try to change it. Remove this particular reward and put another one yourself. If you feel like the craving is not gone, that means now you know what the craving really is. You'll be able, of course, to understand the system way more when we start diving into the examples. But for now, what you need to do is to understand the general concept. As soon as you start listening to the examples, you will see how the system will unfold automatically and you'll be able to apply it right away. And that brings us to the third and the last step that we have, which is change your routine to eliminate the habit itself. When we talked about the habit loop, we talked about the cue and the reward. In the middle, we said there is the routine, which is the habit itself. This is what you're doing and this is what you're trying to stop. So now that you know the cue and you know the reward, it's time for you to change or eliminate the routine, which is the habit. Now, the way to do so is to link the old cue to the new behavior that you're trying to implement and turn into a habit. If, for example, you have this habit of eating a pizza every time you're watching your TV show to get the reward, which is the satisfaction of eating this pizza, if you put the cue of watching your series and you link it to the new routine, which is instead of eating a pizza, eating a salad, and you also get the reward of getting satisfied, of course, you're not hungry anymore, and eating something to be able to tame the cravings that you're having. But the trick is to find a reward that would also satisfy the craving that you had satisfied in the old habit. If you find a reward that would not satisfy the same craving that you had in the old habit, you will encounter a lot of problems when it comes to consistency, and you will have a lot of slips during your journey. So if you found, for example, that a salad is not satisfying your craving, try other healthy food. Maybe an omelet with some vegetables on the side and some oats, maybe some milk. You need to figure out what would satisfy your craving, just like you're satisfying your craving when you're eating the pizza. Now that you have a cue and you have a reward and you have a new habit that is, of course, linked to the cue and that satisfies the same craving when it comes to the reward as the old habit, it will be way easier for you to adapt to it because the main parts of the habit are the cue and the reward. So by changing this routine, you will not be putting a lot of effort into it. The routine will be easy to change because it doesn't really matter what you're doing as long as you get to the reward that your brain expects to get satisfied and not make you feel, of course, discomfort and stress that you're not doing the old habit. If you think that you did not really understand the system yet, go through the lecture again, and if you encountered some trouble, because the system is not easy, it's complicated. Of course, if the system was easy and you can easily apply it on a day-to-day basis, everybody would use it. But through the examples that we're going to go through in later lectures, you will be able to understand the system way more and eventually implement it effectively.